Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books. Today I have another book review for you, and that is for The Sword of Kaigen by Wang. This is a self-published fantasy book, one of the most popular one on BookTube, it seems. This is one that I've been wanting to read for a while, because I've heard, basically everybody that I've ever heard talk about this book has loved it. And so last December, there was a bunch of indie books on sale, and this was one of them, so I got it, and I've been looking forward to reading it. And I finally got around to it. I read it over the course of pretty much the entirety of February and the beginning of March. This one took me a while to get through. Of course, like the first maybe quarter or so of the book, I was kind of going through really slowly because I was reading some other stuff in between. And then once I finished up some other books, this kind of was the one that I really started paying a lot of attention to. Going into this book, obviously, I'd heard great things about it, so I was excited to read it. I was hoping I would enjoy it. Towards the beginning of this book, if you had asked me, like in the first 150, 200 pages, what I thought of this book, I would have been like, yeah, it's a decent, 7 out of 10. It's okay. It's good, but it's not blowing my mind. But in the end, this book really did blow me away. I loved it. And the early portions of the book that I didn't love as much, I now look back on much more fondly because the book just wouldn't have been the same without it. I'll get into that in my review, talk a little bit more about that in particular. But yeah, this was an amazing book. Definitely, I think the hype with this one is well-deserved. This is a fantastic book that I really loved. To get into some good things about this book, of which are the majority of things I have to say about it. First of all, I really loved the characters in this book. This book is very much character driven. There is a strong plot, but it's much more, I think, towards the background. The plot of this book essentially comes in 3 parts. You have, there's this initial 200, it's split into 200-page chunks or so. It's a little more than that, but around 200-page chunks, where it's the first 200 pages is all just kind of normal life for these people in this village. It's a Japanese inspired setting, so it's this Japanese fantasy style village. And then the middle 200 pages is just straight action. The village gets attacked by a rival nation, or another nation anyway. And it's just straight action and chaos for the middle 200 pages. Then the final 200 pages is the aftermath, trying to rebuild, trying to deal with the events that just happened, different government and type stuff going on, and things like that. So the plot itself is interesting and I enjoyed it, but really this is a character piece. This is about mostly this one family. I believe the Matsuda family, if I know the name correctly. I can't remember a lot of the names in this book, unfortunately, because a lot of them are very Asian-inspired, Japanese-inspired names, and that just doesn't stick in my mind as well for some reason. But the Matsuda family, I believe, is the name of it, and it's basically, this mother, this father, a couple kids, and then also their community. But really, that family is the big focus of this book. And it's kind of establishing what this family is like, and then just the different perspectives of these family members, especially the mother, throughout the rest of this, the entirety of this book. Just the chaos and the tragedies and everything that happened throughout this book. And very much is about those characters. And the characters are very strong. The interactions, the dialogues between them are fantastic. Each character kind of has their own kind of personality. They have a strong sense of self to them, strong sense of, character. And then, all the characters are interesting. They have things going on. There's character arcs that are really well done, especially there's the mother, the father, and one of the children all have super strong character arcs throughout this book that just blew me away. And I really just absolutely loved. And the character work in general, for a book like this that is very character driven, it needs to have great characters, and all the characters in this are fantastically done. And even by the halfway point of this book, I was really feeling for these characters. There are moments in this book that had me on the verge of tears for these characters. It's just so well done. I absolutely loved the character work in this book. Also, I mentioned the middle 200 pages or so is just straight action. The action in this book is some of the best, most engaging, most visceral feeling action I have ever read in a book. It is amazing. It is very violent, quite violent, but it feels like you really feel it in this book. Like sometimes when in books, when a really big action scene comes on, there's some authors where I get really into it. Some authors like have a way with writing action that I'm just like, okay, I'm in it, like I'm enjoying this, I can visualize it, like everything is just really well done. That's what this book does. There's some authors where it's like an action scene comes on, it's just like, oh, it's just an action scene. I kind of check out a little bit. I'm like, oh, this is cool, but you know, whatever. Let's get to the next thing. With this book, it was like I was right into it, and a big portion of that, first of all, is the characters, because they're so well done. When they are put into danger, you really feel for them, and you're really like on the edge of your seat, because there is legitimate real danger in this book for these characters. The action itself is amazingly written. Like I could visualize it. It was interesting. It was engaging. The magic in this is, you know, it doesn't play a huge part in the story, but the magic is really cool and implemented very interestingly, both in the combat sections of the book. Like the magic in the action portion is just awesome, but then it's also used in other places in very interesting ways. Just everything about the action in this book is amazingly done. Even, you know, there's even like one-on-one duels that are just like, not even just the action portions that are like big and epic and just absolute chaos. Even the sections that are just one-on-one duels are amazingly written, and I loved them. And it's just, like I said, you just feel the action. I said that it was very visceral action. That is like the word that I would describe to that word that I would use to describe the action in this book. It is just visceral and just intense and amazingly done. And also, I really liked the world building in this book. It's not the focus by any means, but it is interesting. It's well done. There's some interesting things going on with like, you know, certain things about the world that some characters don't know about and learning about, and kind of being like, oh, there's things going on that are not like actually what they seem, which is interesting. The world building is not super intensive, but I enjoyed it. Let's see. I also think that the book ended very well. It has a great ending. The ending of this book feels, there's the big action scene in the middle of the book, which was amazing, which kind of made the ending of the book feel a little bit lesser to me, because it was like, oh, it doesn't measure up to the big, you know, almost like war section in the middle of this book. But it hits really well on an emotional level in several portions. There's like an ending duel that is amazingly done. There's like the last chapter of this book, which I think is the longest chapter in the book. It's like 50, 60 pages, was also amazing. Just had a lot of emotional resonance and weight to it that I really enjoyed, and just ended very well in general. Fantastic ending to this book. So that is a lot of the good stuff I have to say about this book. Amazing action, amazing characters, really cool magic, you know, enjoyable world building, all that stuff. Now to talk about some of the negative portions of this book, of which there's one single complaint that I have, which isn't even a big issue, and I think that it couldn't have been done any other way, but it is still something. The first 200 pages of the book and the last 200 pages are very much like slower, like much more character driven. Like not that the middle of the book isn't, but the middle of the book is like where 95% of the action is. And it's awesome and exciting and everything. But then the rest of the book, like especially towards the end, felt a little slow to me. The beginning of the book also felt kind of slow, but I think it really worked because it was this build up. You get to know these characters, get to know this world, and the middle portion of the book would not have had the same effect that it did have if the early portions of the book were not the way they are. So in retrospect, I'm more okay with it. The later portions of the book were, again, I don't know how it could have been done any other way other than maybe just trimming it down a little, because it does deal a lot with like the aftermath of this huge event, and both in like a personal sense, emotionally, in terms of the government, like the government response to it. You know, this place is like part of an empire, so what's the empire's response to this? You know, the village in general, like they've just been hit by this attack. How are they going to respond to this? All this kind of stuff is really well done, and also works really well on like character levels and things like that. But it is a little slow. But at the same time, like I said, I don't know how else it could have been done. And the ending of the book, even though it was not anywhere near as like bombastic and epic and crazy as the middle portion of the book was, I don't know how else it could have been done, because it hits emotionally, and I think that's the more important thing. So it's like the beginning and ending of the book are a little slow, but it works, and it especially considering how just chaotic the middle of the book is. I feel like you need kind of that space to breathe a little bit, especially considering that that is like the only really big action-y kind of section of the book at all. So it works. I get it. I get why it's there. It works really well. It just felt a little slow at times, but isn't really a big issue at all. It's just one thing I wanted to point out. Other than that, I adored this book. Just had a great time with it. Some of the best characters, best action that I have read in some time. Definitely a new personal favorite. I don't know if I'd say it's like one of my favorite books of all time or something, but it definitely is in like that top tier of like favorite books that I've read. Just absolutely loved it. As far as a rating out of 10 that I'd give the Sword of Kaigen, I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10. The only reason I dock it from a 10 is because it was a little slow at times, and even though I get why it's there, it still is like, you know, as I was reading it, I was like, okay, can this kind of move along just a little bit more? But I get why it was there. I get why it was written the way it was. Not a big issue at all. Just had a great time with this book in general, though. Yeah, high recommendation from me. I went into this book hoping I'd enjoy it, but also kind of having that sense of like, everybody talks this book up. Is it actually going to live up to those expectations? And I'm happy to say that it absolutely lived up to and even surpassed my expectations. I loved this book. So high recommendation from me. That pretty much wraps up my review. Let me know in the comments if you've read The Sword of Kaigen, and if so, what you thought of it. If you really enjoyed it, if you didn't care for it so much, whatever you thought, let me know down in the comments. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for this video. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.